The fork in my hand stopped halfway to my mouth the moment the restaurant door opened. I didn't know why I looked up. Maybe instinct. Maybe the strange pressure that fills the air right before something important happens. But when I turned my head, I saw something that didn't belong in a place like this. A little girl. Alone. 7 years old at most. Wearing a faded red dress and shoes that had seen too many summers. She stood in the doorway like she was entering a courtroom instead of a warm restaurant by the Monterey shore. Her small eyes scanned every corner with the kind of awareness children should never have, the kind I knew too well from my own childhood. The waiter moved toward her, ready to send her back outside. But she slipped around him without even brushing his sleeve. Smooth, silent, determined. She walked between tables where couples leaned close over wine and businessmen laughed over deals. None of them noticed her. But I did. Because she was coming straight to me. My name is Leonid Korn. People in this city pretend not to know what I do, but they know enough to stay out of my way. I sit in corners because I like watching the entrances. I like knowing what danger looks like before it reaches me. But that night, danger walked toward me in the shape of a little girl with tangled hair and a trembling jaw. She stopped at my table like she had rehearsed it. No fear, no apology. She placed a small fabric pouch on my napkin. The stitching was uneven, the kind a child makes when she's trying her hardest. Then she looked me right in the eyes. "If I pay, can you scare the monsters in my house?" Her voice wasn't soft, it wasn't childish. It was steady, like she had practiced it 100 times in front of a cracked mirror. I had faced men who pointed guns at me with shaking hands. This little girl shook less than any of them. I didn't touch the pouch. I didn't smile or wave her away. Instead, I leaned back. I needed a moment. Something in her question hit me like a fist to the ribs. "What kind of monsters?" I asked. Her small fingers twisted the hem of her dress. She took a breath before answering. "She comes home tired. She wears white. She helps people in the hospital. But when she leaves at night, he comes instead." Her eyes didn't leave mine. She didn't need to say his name. I understood the kind of monster she meant. The kind that smells like cheap bottles under the sink. The kind whose footsteps warn you before his voice does. The kind who turns a home into a battlefield. She spoke like she was reporting weather. Storms and shouting, doors slamming, her mother not knowing, her hiding in a closet with a pillow over her ears. Every word tightened something inside me. Memories I thought I had buried started rising. A small apartment in another city. A man whose anger shook the walls. A closet I used to hide in. A promise I made at 8 years old. If I ever got strong, I would never let someone make me afraid again. "How much is in the pouch?" I asked. She opened it with careful fingers and poured the contents onto the table. 3 quarters. 75 cents. Each coin shining under the candlelight like a tiny shield. "I've been saving," she said. "One from the couch, one from Mama's jar, one from the fountain at the park. People throw wishes in there. I took one because I need mine more." My chest tightened. I had made deals worth millions. I had watched men sweat over numbers. But those 3 coins, they were the heaviest payment anyone had ever offered me. "That's not enough," I said quietly. Her face fell. Not dramatically. Just a small breaking, the way kids learn to break quietly. I continued before she could cry. "It's not enough, because you can't pay for something like this. Pick them up. You've already paid more than anyone should." She hesitated, confused. She'd expected the world to work like the rules she learned at home. Nothing comes free. Everything has a cost. "How do I know you'll really do it?" she whispered. "People say things they don't mean." I leaned forward until we were eye to eye. No threats, no promises, just truth. "You don't know," I said, "but you're going to go home and wait anyway, because you've already decided someone needs to help. And I'm the one you chose." Her throat moved like she had swallowed something sharp. "Are you like him?" she asked. "The kind that hurts people who can't fight back." For a moment I couldn't breathe, not because I was insulted, but because I understood why she needed to ask. "Yes," I said, "but not the same way, and never to someone like you." She nodded slowly. She didn't smile. She didn't thank me. She just backed away, keeping her eyes on me until she reached the door. And then she was gone. I sat there frozen while my untouched food went cold. The waiter asked if I wanted something else, but I couldn't answer. All I could see was a red dress and 3 coins shining on my table like a promise I didn't fully understand yet. But I knew one thing. A little girl had walked into a room full of strangers and chosen me, and now I had to decide what kind of monster I wanted to be. When Elsie walked out of that restaurant, something happened inside me that I didn't expect. I'd been feared for years. Men crossed the street when they saw me coming. People lowered their eyes in elevators. I lived in a world built on danger and silence, and I had learned to carry it like armor. But the moment her small figure disappeared through that door, the armor felt heavier than ever. I didn't go home. I couldn't. I left the restaurant, ignored my driver, and walked through the cold Monterey night. The ocean air hit my face, sharp and salty. Every step echoed a memory I had tried to bury. A memory of another hallway, another night, another small boy pressing himself into a closet, hoping he could become invisible. By morning, I was at my desk with surveillance feeds in front of me. My people didn't question me when I said, "Find her." They knew better. Within hours, I had her name. Elsie Vaughn, 7 years old, Hawthorne Elementary. Lives with her mother, Karen Varon, a nurse who worked night shifts at Monterey Bay General. And then there was him. Dennis Kruger. No job, no lease, no right to be in that home. But he was there anyway. When the first surveillance report came in, I felt something inside me twist tight. Every detail was familiar. Every timestamp read like my own childhood, written in someone else's handwriting. Karen left for work at 10:30. Dennis arrived drunk at 11:15. Shouting started at 11:40. Elsie hid in her bedroom at 8:30, earlier than usual, like she could smell the danger hours before it arrived. I stared at the screen as if looking long enough would change the picture. It didn't. My voice was steady when I spoke. "Document everything. Watch every exit. And unless that man lays a hand on her, you do not intervene yet." My assistant nodded, understanding the difference between patience and hesitation. I wasn't waiting because I doubted what needed to be done. I was waiting because if I moved too early, the law might protect him instead of her. That was unacceptable. The next morning, I watched Elsie walk to the bus with her mother. Karen kissed her forehead, smiling in that tired, loving way only mothers know. She had no idea what her daughter had done. No idea her little girl had found me. No idea her bravery was the only thing standing between them and disaster. When they disappeared from the camera frame, I opened the report from the night before again. I read it even though I didn't need to. The words burned anyway. Shouting. Slamming doors. Throwing things. Threats. No physical contact recorded yet. Yet, I closed the laptop harder than I meant to. For hours, I tried to work. Contracts, properties, shipments. But every few minutes, my mind drifted back to a red dress and 3 coins that had rolled across my table like tiny, desperate prayers. At 6:30 that evening, the alert came through. Dennis was back at the apartment, carrying 2 bags from a liquor store. It was the same scene as night after night. Predictable. Repeating. A cycle that never ended unless someone forced it to. And this time, someone would. I stood at my office window while the sun dropped over the bay. The sky turned the color of blood diluted with gold. I watched my own reflection in the glass and almost didn't recognize it. Power changes people, but sometimes memory changes them more. A child had offered me 75 cents thinking safety could be bought, and maybe she wasn't wrong. "Bring me everything we have on Dennis," I said. The folder landed on my desk 20 minutes later. Warrants in Nevada, missed court dates, old charges that had slipped through cracks, no real connections, no job, no roots. A ghost of a man who survived by draining everyone around him. I handed the folder back. "We need him gone," I said. "Permanently, but clean." My assistant nodded. "We could have him arrested on the outstanding warrants." I shook my head. "Temporary fix. He'll be back." "What about relocation? Someone like him would take a job if it looked good enough." That got my attention. Within hours, we had a plan. A real construction job in North Dakota. Hard labor. Long hours. On-site housing. A salary that sounded too good to refuse. A 6-month minimum contract. Far away from Monterey. Far away from Karen. Far away from Elsie. He would think he won a chance. He had no idea he was being removed like a tumor. The recruiter called him Thursday morning. I listened to the recorded call later. Dennis's voice was groggy, confused, then greedy. The promise of money pulled him in like a hook through soft flesh. By Saturday, he signed the paperwork. By Sunday, he was gone. Sunday morning felt different. I stood at my office window again, watching the fog roll over the water, and I knew Elsie was waking up to a home that finally had silence in it. No shouting. No shaking walls. No footsteps that made her heart pound in her ears. I should have felt relief, satisfaction, victory. Instead, I felt something else. A strange weight in my chest, like her 3/4 were still sitting there, waiting for me to decide what kind of man I was going to be now that the monster was gone. Because removing him wasn't the end, not for her, not for her mother, and not for me. When Dennis left the city, I thought that would be the end of it. The monster was gone. The danger removed. The home finally quiet. But life isn't that simple. Removing a threat doesn't rebuild what fear has already broken. And somehow, without planning to, I found myself making sure their broken pieces didn't stay broken. On Monday morning, Karen woke to a silence she hadn't heard in years. Silence that wasn't made of tension, or fear, or the heavy pause before shouting. Real silence. Peace. She found a note on the counter in Dennis's crooked handwriting talking about a big opportunity and a fresh start he needed to take. She didn't believe it, but she didn't question it either. Some miracles don't need explaining. Elsie ate breakfast in small bites, staring at her mother, waiting to understand whether this quiet was temporary or real. When Karen told her he was gone, the girl didn't smile. She didn't cheer. She just asked the one question that mattered. Is he coming back? Karen didn't know, but I did. He wouldn't. That should have been enough for me. I should have let their lives return to normal and stepped out of the picture. But every report I read, every update from my people reminded me how close this family had been to breaking. Fear doesn't disappear just because the source is removed, and damage doesn't heal without help. So I helped. Quietly, carefully, from a distance. Karen's overdue utility bills disappeared. The hospital chose her for a continuing education grant she didn't remember applying for. Repairs she couldn't afford on her car were suddenly handled by a mechanic who claimed it was part of a community program. Elsie's school accepted her into a scholarship fund for art supplies and activities. The child who hid in closets now painted pictures of open skies and houses with sunlight. I watched from the background, not because they needed to know, but because I needed to know they were okay. Weeks passed, and the changes in them were impossible to ignore. Karen started walking with her shoulders a little looser. She began laughing with coworkers again. She bought herself a real winter coat instead of the thin one she'd worn for 3 years. The tired look in her eyes softened into something gentle, something alive. And Elsie changed the most. She slept through the night. She smiled at little things. A bird outside the window, a new pencil set, the way the leaves changed color near her school. Her drawings weren't dark anymore. Her teacher sent a note home saying she was blossoming creatively. I liked that word, blossoming. She was becoming the child she never got to be. Still, there was one thing Karen didn't know. I wasn't doing any of this out of obligation. It wasn't a debt. It wasn't charity. It wasn't even a promise. I was doing it because something in that restaurant had wrecked me. The night she placed those 3/4 on my napkin, something had shifted in me. A part of myself I thought was dead had opened its eyes. By December, I had accepted something I never expected. I cared about these two people more than I had cared about anyone in a long time, and that scared me more than any enemy or deal ever had. Because caring made you vulnerable, and vulnerable was a word I had cut out of my vocabulary years ago. Then, 3 days before Christmas, Karen received an envelope at the hospital. Inside was a simple card with a reservation time and the name of the restaurant where Elsie had found me. She read the address twice, and she came. She walked into the restaurant wearing her white hospital uniform. No makeup, hair pulled back. She looked tired, but beautiful in a quiet, unpolished way that made something in my chest move. When she reached my table, I stood, not because it was polite, but because she deserved it. "You're the one," she said, not asked, stated, "Yes. You helped us, all of it." Why? I could have lied. I could have said something clean and simple. But she didn't need lies. She had lived enough of those. "Your daughter asked me to scare away her monsters," I said. "So I did." Her breath caught for a moment. She sat slowly, her hands around the untouched wine glass like she needed something solid to hold on to. "I should be afraid of you," she whispered. "I should take Elsie and run far away. That would be the smart thing." "You're right," I said, "but you won't." Her eyes lifted to mine, searching, testing, measuring the truth of my words. "Why not?" she asked. "Because you know I don't want anything from you. And because you know I meant it when I said I'm not here to hurt you." Quote. She held my gaze for a long moment. Then she asked the question I hadn't expected. "What happens now?" I didn't answer right away. I knew what I wanted, but she had already survived too much to be trapped again. "That depends on you," I said. "If you want distance, I'll give it. If you want me to stay in the background, I will. But if you want something else, something more, we can take it slowly." She didn't look away. "I want to know you," she said softly. "Not the rumors, not the shadows. You." It hit harder than any blow I'd ever taken, and I knew this wasn't about duty anymore, or guilt, or the past. It was about something new, something dangerous, something I hadn't let myself feel in years. Hope. Karen's answer stayed with me long after the plates were cleared and the restaurant lights dimmed. "I want to know you," she had said, not out of gratitude, not out of fear, but out of something quiet and honest, something I hadn't felt in so long I almost didn't recognize it. Hope. For weeks after that night, nothing between us felt rushed. There were no promises made in whispers, no dramatic confessions, no whirlwind romance. Instead, there were small things, simple things, real things. A late-night phone call when she couldn't sleep after a long shift. A morning coffee I brought her on my way to the office. A quiet car ride home, where neither of us felt the need to fill the silence. Sometimes she talked about her work. Sometimes I talked about mine, at least the parts she could hear without fear. She never pushed for details about what I did in the shadows of the city. She didn't want titles or numbers or rumors. She wanted the man behind all of it. And somehow, without asking anything from me, she kept pulling more of that man into the light. Elsie grew fast in those months. You could see it in everything she did. The way she marched into school with her little backpack bouncing. The way she dragged Karen to the beach every weekend to collect shells. The way she drew pictures of people holding hands, always 3 people. One evening, she taped a drawing to my car window as I waited outside her school. There were 3 figures, one tall, one medium, one tiny in a red dress. Above them was a sky with birds that looked more like check marks. "That's us," she said proudly. "You're the tall one." Karen flushed, embarrassed. "Elsie?" But I just smiled. "Do I look that tall in real life?" I asked her. She nodded, with full seriousness. "You're the tallest man I know." For a child who once hid in a closet to survive the night, the fact that she saw me as something safe, something strong, did something to me I still can't explain. And as winter melted into spring, our strange, quiet little bond became something steady. Karen and I didn't rush anything. We didn't need labels. We didn't need fireworks. We just needed understanding. Some nights we walked by the shoreline while Elsie ran ahead collecting rocks, her laughter carried by the wind like music. Other nights, Karen cooked dinner while I helped Elsie with homework I hadn't done since I was her age. I sat at their small kitchen table, feeling something settle in my chest, something warm, something simple, something I didn't dare name. One morning, after her night shift, Karen stepped out of the hospital and found Elsie running to her. I stood across the street, watching them fold into each other like they were pieces of the same heart. Karen looked up and saw me, and she smiled. Not a small smile. Not a polite smile. A real smile, filled with gratitude and trust and something like softness. I raised a hand. She raised one back, and in that quiet moment, I knew something had changed. Not in her, in me. Because for the first time in years, the monster I used to carry inside me, the one built from old scars, old fear, old rage, felt smaller, quieter, like someone had turned down the volume on a storm that had lived inside my ribs for too long. Elsie had paid me 75 cents to scare away her monsters. What I didn't expect was that helping her would scare away mine too. Weeks later, when the days grew longer and the air smelled like spring, Karen asked me something while we walked along the beach. "Do you ever think about the future?" she asked, her voice soft. I looked at her, at Elsie running ahead of us, at the sun melting gold into the sea. And for the first time since I was a boy hiding in a closet, I said the truth. "Yes," I answered, "I do now." Karen slipped her hand into mine. No fireworks. No dramatic music. Just two hands that finally found the right place to rest. Elsie turned around, saw us, and grinned. "Come on," she shouted. "You're too slow." Karen laughed, and I felt something inside me settle into place like a door finally closing on a past that had been open too long. The three of us walked together down the shore, no monsters behind us, none ahead, just steps moving in the same direction. 75 cents had bought more than protection. It had bought a beginning I never saw coming, a beginning I didn't know I needed, a beginning I wasn't letting go of. Not now, not ever.